Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to TV3's election coverage. The Winchester Town Elections, 1997. My name is Alan Iden, and as usual, I have the privilege of being joined here with Alan McDonald, and we're going to be bringing you some interesting coverage tonight, some interesting races. Alan, welcome.
Great to be with you. Thank you very much. Christmas Eve again for the town election, folks.
Yep.
In fact, this year, Alan, there were more people on the ballot than we've had since the town charter in 1975. 20 candidates, 4 contested races, exciting races for planning board, for selectmen, school committee, and housing authority. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight.
And as contrasted from last year, where we were sitting here at approximately this time wondering what we were going to talk about, and by contrast, what did we have for candidates last year?
Well, we had 2 major races, but we only had the races in selectmen and school committee, and we had a challenger and incumbent running, and we had 3 for 2 and 3 for 2 in both of those races. So other than that, they were uncontested races and relatively quiet for town meeting as well. So this is a much different year. The pendulum has swung back quite a bit.
Absolutely, and if you've been to the polls today, and we hope you have, if you haven't, you've got 15 minutes to get down there. But we're looking at a lot of 4 interesting contests here. We have 6 candidates running for 2 slots in the selectmen's. Only one of the 6 candidates is an incumbent. Very interesting setup in the planning board, where we have 5 candidates for 2 slots. No incumbents. Nobody who's ever been on the planning board before. School committees, I guess, is a little quieter.
School committee's 2 incumbents and 1 challenger, and actually thinking back to last year with Bob Beatty against Carol Mullen was the challenge there, and Janusz Tabis against Eli Bortman was a challenge, and this year we have both Ed O'Connell and Kathy Bodie running for re-election, and of course challenged by the candidate Lydia Rivera Abrams, who's a new face to the ballot, but certainly been active in school affairs for a little while, and that came out in the campaign.
And we also have a race in the housing authority between Nicholas Bonapane and Susan Keller.
Traditionally, we haven't had as many candidates for housing authority. One year we had 6 for 4 seats, actually going all the way back to 1971, but usually we've had either 1 or 2 candidates for 1 spot in the housing authority, and it'll be an interesting one to see how that goes. People have been a little bit visible in the town, so we'll see how the vote goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting. I suppose before we get too involved with our contested races, we probably ought to mention what the uncontested seats are. As usual, our town moderator is running for
21st term.
21st term.
This will be John Sullivan's 21st term as town moderator, and that succeeds 9 years as a selectman, and so this will be John's 30th year in townwide office, which is quite an achievement.
Quite an achievement for public record. I know that at town meeting last week they recognized Mike Sirocco for, I believe, his 50th year.
Michael has completed his 50th year. He was elected to town meeting in 1947. Harry Shuffalo we celebrated last year, also 50th year. And of course, Harry's still actively on the planning board, and Michael is a candidate again for town meeting, which we're delighted to see his enthusiasm in his second half century of activity.
Unparalleled there.
That's right.
We also have Eric Josephson for one seat on the Board of Assessors.
Eric is
for re-election.
Yep, thank you. He's running for his 3rd term on the Board of Assessors, and of course he is joined there on the board already with people who've got length of service. George Anderson, who's in his 6th term, actually 3rd successive now. He had a little break between his first 3 and his second 3. And Mark Lombardi, who's serving, actually having 4 years, 89 to 93, and then coming back last year. Mark's really in his 2nd and a half term on the assessors, so Eric will be running for his 3rd term tonight.
Well, we'd be also, let's just wrap this up here. We've got Elizabeth Britt is running as newcomer, running for the Board of Health.
Elizabeth Britt is a newcomer. She's lived in Winchester for 15 years, and she actually is the Winchester High School nurse, and married to a doctor, and has a daughter who's a doctor, very familiar with health issues, and she'll, of course, join Dr. Don Shipman and Dr. Andy Schwartz on the Board of Health.
On the Board of Health. And another very familiar name is Lane McGovern, running for re-election as a library trustee.
fourth term for Wayne, and the library trustees have the most solid length of service situation there, and I'll mention the other library trustees as we go, but they're all in their third or fourth term, and I would like to give a little recognition to the stability in the town boards, which has helped us, I think, in managing through the library situation and some other things in town.
Well, speaking of recognition,
Yes.
and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
It's time to recognize the other half of our TV3, Channel 3 election coverage tonight, and that would be very familiar faces to our viewers. That'd be Sandy Rogers and Selectman Jerry Polcari, who are joining us over at Town Hall. There they are. They're all mic'd up and earphoned up, and can we hear them?
We can. We're all ready to go. In fact, we're really looking forward to this evening. I think for the first time in many, many, many years, as you've been saying, we have some real contests out there. So it means that we're going to have lots more to talk about. I do remember last year when I was saying something about what a quiet year it was.
Very quiet.
And Jerry was asking me, did you see any car toppers? And I said, I saw one. Well, I will say right now, I have certainly seen more than one. And if I were to do an informal contest, I would say that perhaps Josh Alper won the car top contest. I would say that Donis D'Agostino, because of course it just says D'Agostino, really, and probably Powers, Steve Powers.
Actually, I call them roof racks. I'm not sure. But,
Okay.
I call them. I always call them roof racks. But I think the town of Winchester probably has 50 of them altogether between all the candidates and all the other races that we've had in time, and I think every one of them is being used tonight over this campaign.
Well, we'll have lots to say. We're going to be doing some analysis over here. We do have, I would say, what would you call it? A chart that tells us.
Yes, we're going to be talking a little bit tonight about how the candidates are doing and what kind of messages they're sending, particularly when you have a crowded race like this, and how did the crowded race come about, and then particularly when it comes to the voter turnout where we are right now. So that's what we're looking at.
So we'll toss it back to you, Alan and Alan, and then we'll be back again with some analysis when you want it.
Okay, well, thanks over there, Sandy and Jerry. We missed a bit of your first part. The audience heard it. We didn't, so well, you might have to recap for us later.
All right.
But we know, as usual, it's insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now we're back in the studio here. It's great to have those two joining us over at Town Hall. We probably ought to take a moment and, as some people may not be aware, blow our own horn.
Oh, if you'd like to blow your own horn there.
Well, we'd like to show off our trophy here. This has happened since. I don't know if we can get a close-up of this. This has happened since our last election coverage. Let's see if we can get our 1995 election coverage here. You and I believe probably the same team over at Town Hall won a hometown video festival winner in the live programming category, and a substantial number of entries. I'm told were 1,700 and some entries nationwide. There we go. And we're real proud of this. Decision 95, local election coverage, live programming, and out of 1,700 nationwide contestants, we topped the score. So big congratulations.
You were particularly good that evening.
I think it was the team effort, and not to be ignored is the team behind the camera. Don Cronin is in there in the studio again tonight, ably producing this and directing this program, and as he did back in '95. So
I think having Don's cousins on the voting board was a very important thing.
Well, that probably helped a little bit, and as Don has pointed out, he's in the process of growing more candidates here. 6-month-old Rachel is going to be a future video producer, and I don't know if we can getting quite that close. So while
we do that?
While we're filling up these next few minutes before the polls close,
there she is.
There she is. Okay, there's a future television programmer, Rachel Cronin, Don's 6-month-old daughter.
We'll have her in here.
7 months. I was just told 7 months. She's growing up. She's growing up right here before our eyes, isn't it?
Well, Don does a great job, and we're pleased that he's been recognized in a national way, and he deserves all of that, and the tremendous crew that puts this show on, because we get to sit here and talk a lot while a dozen or 2 dozen people run around and do all the work, so we
Right.
fully appreciate it.
Well, we're going to, you know, we've actually got Dawn in a tie tonight, because at some point we're going to be showing the rest of the crew that's in the studio and behind the scenes that are working very hard for us tonight to make us look exceptionally good, such as it is. All right. And I'm told that's not easy to do. All right, town meeting.
Town
What's
meeting.
going on? We have contests in town meeting too.
We have contests in town meeting. We have 83 people running for 69 seats, which is pretty good in terms of numbers. Our record really is 100. We averaged 100 candidates for the 69 seats or so that are up each year back at the turn of the 80s into the 90s. But given the last couple of years, this is a pretty good turnout for new candidates. We always do get a turnover of about 20 members out of the 192 town meeting members each year. We actually had 30, or really a little few more than 30 now that I think of it, back in '94. But in '95 and '6 we went back down to our traditional new numbers. But those new numbers give us a 2/3 to 3/4 turnover every 6 or 7 years in town meeting. So that's a lot of new faces. It means that we have really less than 20% of our members who were there prior to 1990 in town meeting. So we have a lot of turnover in town meeting, which is actually complemented by the fact that there might be 30 to 35 town meeting members who have townwide experience and have been town meeting members for 20 years or more. So that's a nice balance, I think, in terms of numbers. And truthfully, we've seen a stability in the boards themselves, whereas in the 70s and prior to the 70s, town meeting was fairly stable. And the boards turned over because people didn't run for re-election very often, if at all. People have run for re-election to townwide boards more since the 1970s, and we wind up with people 3, 4, even 5 terms. We have a candidate, Ed O'Connell, running for 5th term in the school committee tonight. This will be his 29th, 30th, and 31st years in a row. If he's elected to the school committee again, he will also have more than 30 years of townwide service. But there are a number of people, as we'll see through the discussion tonight, who serve in townwide capacity for a number of years, and that offsets the turnover at the town meeting level, where we really have a balance of institutional memory as well as new faces. So this is a great year for town meeting because we're going to have a turnover of at least 22, possibly 26 new names, and maybe a few more than that.
And I think we have, I believe we have contests in 7 out of the 8 precincts.
Right. The only precinct that doesn't have the full contest is Precinct 8. There are 7 candidates for 8 seats in Precinct 8, so there'll be 1 write-in. But all the other precincts offer campaigns. And I should mention that we're going to see go off the ballot from town meeting some significant names as well that we're going to miss quite a bit of town meeting, frankly. But just to mention them, because I put them down here as I looked at the ballot, people who ran in 1994 for the 3 years who are not on the 97 ballot for town meeting: Bill Jervy, Judy Muja, Tom Schmidt, Todd Cronin, Judy King, Dottie Shannon, Jeannie Lynch, Ted Robinson, Peter Segerstrom, Cynthia Crummy, Jack Monteith, Frank Curtis. Those are all people who've had quite a bit of activity in town meeting. And I want to mention Doris Emmons, because Doris, who passed away a month ago, was kind of my partner, I'd say, in town meeting. We sat together for many years, and she was John Sullivan's commuter mate with John coming down from the house next door. She was a neighbor of John's on Canterbury Road. And Doris, 28 years in town meeting and town activity. We miss her a great deal. So I want to mention that. But we have all those folks who are going off town meeting now, and new names will come on. We still have on this ballot 15 people running for town meeting who have served in townwide office, so in elected townwide office, and another 20 who have been in appointed townwide office. So we still have 35 people on this ballot, even with these names going off, who have townwide service, either appointed or elected. So we will continue to have that kind of institutional memory in town meeting.
It's amazing,
Even with
isn't
all the
it?
new
Yep.
names.
Great. Let's take a look at some of the selectmen candidates and maybe some of their background. I suppose we might as well discuss them in ballot order. We have,
This is the most interesting selectmen's race in many a year. 6 candidates. We have, for those people who've said in the past, and myself included, gee, we'd like to have more and get more candidates sometimes on the ballot. Here we have it. We have 6 candidates for 2 seats. We have 1 incumbent, Steve Powers, who's running for his 3rd term, 4th term actually, on the Board of Selectmen now. He's He has been challenged by Donna D'Agostino, who's running for her third time, by Bob Beatty, who's running for his second time, by Josh Alpa, who's running for his first time, and people who've had townwide visibility, Josh Alpa having been chair of the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, and two new candidates who haven't had townwide experience, but who are also running for the first time. And that's Diane Patalano Long, and that she's running from up in the corner of Precinct 5. And we have Christopher Galuzzo, who's also running, and he's over on Wainwright Road. And both of those candidates are new to the town meeting ballot, to the town-wide ballot, I should say, but they're bringing quite a bit of energy to that race. Chris Galuzzo, who did a good job at the League of Women Voters debate, Diane Patalano Long, who couldn't be there for that, as an attorney with a young family up on Ridge Street.
Yeah.
But we have a set of candidates here that have a lot of townwide experience. Donna D'Agostino, as I say, third time out, Miss Volunteer, really, for
Right.
so many things in the town of Winchester.
Let me cut in for a moment here. I mean,
Okay.
you have the background, and you know, as a former selectman yourself, you know the kind of commitment,
Sure.
everything that's involved there. Let's swing it over to Town Hall. We have a current selectman over there, Jerry Polcari, and I'm sure Jerry has some comments on the selectman's job and the amount of time that's involved in it, and possibly the candidates, Jerry?
Well, actually, Alan, just from a personal experience, anytime you get into these type of races, you spend an awful lot of money. You have to deal a lot with visibilities and mailing, and not only you have to fine-tune your message, and you have to build a very good organization. I think what's happened in time, and particularly in selectmen's races, and I think the reason why we have so many candidates, for example, in this race, has more to do with the fact that of two things. One, we have the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Peter Van Aken, stepping down, but number two, it's also we have an open seat. And we have not had an open seat on the Board of Selectmen for at least 6 or 7 years now. And I think that's made a significant difference and has encouraged a lot more candidates to come out.
Yep.
I think what will differentiate candidates from winning tonight or losing tonight could be a couple things, and specifically will have to do with money. As much as we don't like to admit it, money has a lot to do with if races are won or lost. And I think as a general rule nowadays, that because of just inflation and the cost of buttons and bumper stickers and posters and advertising, you're talking about $5,000. I think that's about right at this current time.
Jerry, do you think we'll find out there's some kind of scandal about any kind of incumbent selectman using the town hall telephones
Oh, absolutely
for
not.
fundraising?
We're not that smart. We don't have a credit card either.
But I think, Jerry, I think this might be a very good opportunity for you to say something about what we have found out about the spending from some of these candidates.
Yeah. Just as an example, just some information we've indicated. For example, Josh Alper, one of the challengers, has raised about $5,400, and this is as of the first campaign period. Bob Beatty has raised $2,300. I don't have anything on Donna D'Agostino, but last time around she used about $7,000. Chris Galuzzo raised about $500. I don't have anything on Diane Patalano Long, and Steve Powers raised about $5,600. So both Josh and Steve Powers are pretty much within the range of what it would take to run for a selectman's race. And given the amount of people you have to reach approximately 3,000 to 4,000 people.
And given some of the information we probably don't have on Donna, it's quite likely that she's probably up in about the same ballpark.
I would guess so. Just in the success level that Donna's had in terms of both the signs and the posters and the advertising, I have to guess that Donna's around $5,000 or $6,000 at this point in time. I think that all the candidates, what's really fascinating is just from being an incumbent selectman right now, is that the candidates across the board pretty much are saying close to the same things. They have variations in various positions, whether in favor of the transfer station increase or against it, or in favor of winning farm development or not, or 2.5 or not. But by and large, this election is not around issues so much as it around the experience and the commitment to the town and the value system around the town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, that's very interesting stuff, and it's unfortunate in many ways that it is expensive to run for the office, but those who have been running, I think, have had a lot of support and received a number of small contributions that make up that large amount.
Yeah, there's no question. I think, when you talk about citizens, people giving $50 to a candidate makes a big difference, particularly in races like this. But the other thing that really makes a big difference is the shoe leather, having people hold signs in the corners, signs on election day, people putting roof racks on the top of their cars, people doing postcards. That really makes a difference. It's the person that hasn't been lost in this. Money has a lot to do with it because of advertising, but the person contact can carry a candidate through.
And I think we've actually seen a great deal more of it. In this election, I've noticed that coffees have come back. For many, many years, we were not having coffees anymore. There's been what I would call some of the campaigns in these three major contestants, I will say at the moment, because it really is going to be a horse race. But in any case, they have stopped at nothing. It's almost like you have 10 things you know you do if you want to be elected, and you do all those 10 things if you want to succeed. And if you do less than 10 things, you might not make it in this race. On the other hand, I think when you're assessing any race, whether it be school committee, planning board, or anything else, depending on what the race is like, is whether you use all 10 things or less than the 10. But I think this selectmen's race has definitely been pulling out all 10 things. You know, you just have run every single thing you can think of.
Right. Alan, I just want to add one more thing, is that just as of 6 o'clock this evening, the vote total was approximately 3,500. Now, to put that in perspective, when you're talking about, in terms of elections, 3,300 is approximately 25% of the registered voters. So we have not only beaten last year's 18%, which is an all-time low, but we have exceeded probably 2 or 3 years ago, which was 25%. So I'll use the word platitude of candidates is actually driving the election, and I think that's actually excellent because it brings out a lot of issues. When you have a lot of voters, it doesn't help the incumbents per se, but it helps the rest of the field and brings them up in terms of voter count.
It's interesting how it can it vary from town to town, too, Jerry. I was talking this afternoon to a town clerk in another town that was in desperate straits, had like 2 candidates for 8 or 10 slots in the in town meeting, and an unopposed, 1 candidate for selectman running unopposed. I think a school committee was like 2 or 3 for 2 slots, and it's amazing how it can change from year to year. And as we go on, I'd like to get some of the comments as we go into planning board and housing authority, maybe some of the comments, particularly planning board, that have been the engine behind bringing out the candidates.
I wouldn't venture to guess, Alan, who would be in front on the planning board.
Oh, I think I have an idea.
Well, I
have an idea.
From my perspective, is if you're looking through the field, they're all they're doing very well. But I think a lot of that race, again, has to do with a little bit more cash. In this case, Chuck Nurnberger and Sam Stroud have spent more money. They've also raised more money. They have if you take a look at it as just a money quotient, they have an advantage. The question is, can they turn that, and also what organization they've been able to build into a winning campaign? That's really critical.
Right. We have, just say we have 5 candidates for 2 slots. 4 who were very visible, 1 who hasn't been too visible. And
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think some of them have been very visible and some very invisible. On the other hand, I think what Jerry said about the selectmen's race, and it's also true about the planning board, without an incumbent, and in fact in the planning board, both incumbents decided not to run. So the field was wide open, and yes, the candidates were coming out of the woodwork.
That's right, absolutely. And it's like, and that's also good. I mean,
it's very good.
I have to tell you, just
I love it.
Just from sitting on a board, anytime a board, for example, the current board of selectmen I've been sitting on has been together now for 4 years. You had the same 5 people for 4 years. And when even replacing 1 member changes the board and changes the complexion of the board, and it doesn't matter who that person is, it changes the complexion, adds new ideas to the process, and it's good for any board at any time.
Very healthy.
Right.
So back to you all.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Jerry.
Well, fortunately, I think in local elections, it's still important to have that personal contact, and that can make up for a lot. As they said, shoe leather and coffees and those kinds of things are very important. We still have in this country 96% of all the elected officials are local officials. 4% of the people elected to office are state and federal level. It may be true at that level that money makes more of a difference than I think it does at the local level. Certainly you need to advertise a little and have some of those expenses covered, but
and you have the practical limits of time, as we get busier and more involved lives,
Right.
just the luxury of being able to go door to door and
Exactly
attend an
right.
awful lot of coffees probably is beyond the reach of a lot of the candidates, and you have to rely on the TV exposure and on the newspaper advertising and car
right.
tops and just name recognition. Got some. Did you want to comment on maybe the planning board members that are not running for re-election?
Let me do that. I just wanted to finish because I had started to mention
Oh,
on
yeah.
the selectmen, but just briefly that you've got in this contest, as I was saying, a challenger who's Donna D'Agostino, who's a former chairman of the planning board and active in town volunteering. You've also got in Bob Beatty, a former chairman of the finance committee, 30 years a town meeting member, and 10 years of finance committee and commissioner of trust funds, plus another 10 years as capital planning. Very involved in financial matters for sure. Josh Alpa, who's chair of the zoning board of appeals and past chair of the conservation commission, very involved in town affairs. And as they say, two new names, Diane Padalata-Long and Chris Galuzzo. So that's an exciting race, and from all quarters of the town. Planning board is also exciting because we have 5 names of people who have not been on the ballot before. Steve DeRosa has not been actively campaigning, so we don't know a lot about him. He may have been actively campaigning, I should say. He wasn't at the League of Women Voters forum, and so we didn't get the chance to see him. My compliments to the league, by the way, because we just heard about how expensive it is to run. That's a freebie for the candidates, and they get a lot of exposure and an opportunity to introduce themselves.
That has been running here
the
all
community.
week on
It's been
Channel 3.
so thank goodness for Continental Cable and the league for letting us have that kind of an opportunity to introduce the candidates to the
And we'll
to the
throw a
voters.
little kudos at you for very ably moderating or chairing that debate this
That
year.
was fun for me, and I appreciate it. Always, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. It was
Nice
nice
job.
happening for me. I enjoyed the involvement. But planning board, I will say, you want to go on to something else, I guess.
No, I was actually I was going to suggest a break.
Oh, you were?
Yes, right.
We'll come back to planning board?
We're gonna come back. We have our people over at Town Hall getting ready to bring you election results as they come in. Don't forget, you're going to further coming on this evening. We're going to be going back to Town Hall for analysis and commentary with Jerry Polcari, Selectman Jerry Polcari, and Sandy Rogers of the Continental Cable crew. We will have, as we say, the results as they come in, and we're going to be seeing some tape segments of the candidates and their comments and remarks that they made at the League of Women Voters forum. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to be back in just a few minutes. So stay tuned as our 1997 local election coverage continues here on Channel 3.
Hi, I'm Anna Keenan-Dixon, host of the new fashion series called Look Your Best. Each and every month, we're going to explore different fashion topics, and time to time, we'll have special guests. We do hope that you will tune in for this wonderful fashion adventure. It'll be a delight to learn how to experiment and see what's new in the fashion scene.
are back with live election coverage here in the Continental Cablevision studio. I'm Alan Iden. Once again, joining me here, Alan McDonald, and over in Town Hall, we are joined with the other half of our election coverage crew, our on-camera crew, and Sandy Rogers and Selectman Jerry Polcari over there. Hi, guys. Welcome back. Once again, want to remind you what we're looking forward to this evening. We will be bringing results as they come into Town Hall. We have a crew over there in Town Hall to bring them to us. We're looking at 4 very exciting races here this evening. We have extended invitations to the candidates, both the winners and non-winners, to come down here and share their thoughts with us. Some over here, some coming down here, I believe, and some going over to Town Hall. So we always look forward to that. We're also going to be seeing some of the highlights of the League of Women Voters Forum that took place a week ago last Sunday. Alan, what have we got?
Got a lot.
We've got a lot to cover here.
I would say, just as we go over to the planning board discussion, Peter Van Aken, who's been twice chairman of the Board of Selectmen, 2 terms, a long period of service with the Capital Planning Committee and chairing that, has just today completed his term of service on townwide election and stepped down to have this vacancy, actually, that we're running for in the Selectmen's race. And our congratulations to Peter Van Aken for a job so well done. Wonderful article tonight in the Daily Times Chronicle about his accomplishments with the board. We don't have anything individually accomplished, of course, in those jobs, but through a great team effort led by Peter in many ways over the years on a lot of those items. He did a terrific job, and I just wanted to mention that. As I would also mention the Dorothea Sapa, who's stepping off the Board of Health after 4 terms and 4 times being chairman of the Board of Health. She's done a tremendous job, first being elected in 1985 to that position, and brings us to our planning board, where 2 men are stepping off, and we have 2 openings for our 5 candidates tonight. Richard Welch, who had 2 terms and again twice chairman while he was serving on the planning board, and Peter Kelleher, who had 1 term and was served as vice chair while he was on the planning board. They're stepping down, and we have 5 candidates for those 2 spots. 3 from Precinct 8, 1 from Precinct 1, and 1 from Precinct 5. As you know, we've had a lot of discussion at town meeting and before the planning board in the last couple of years on developments, projects in the Precinct 8 area next to Precinct 1, where one of the candidates is just over the line from Precinct 8. So we have a lot of interest in that, and but it's a town-wide interest. And truthfully, as we take a look at the ballot, we have Bob Fiorenza, who's listed first on the ballot, who's a real estate broker and very familiar with real estate issues, and that came out in the debate. Sam Stroud from Precinct 8, who is a lot of experience in business management and in land issues as well, and planning issues, and he emphasized that, as you'll see in the tape at the league debate. And Chuck Nurnberger, who is 9 years a town meeting member, very active in town meeting, very active on the rules committee at town meeting, a number of different areas, has had a lot of visibility with the community in those years. And Peter Regan, who is the Precinct 1 candidate. He's one of our under 30 candidates. Chris Galuzzo is under 30, Peter Regan is under 30. Peter's a civil engineer, lives on Churchill Road in Precinct 1, and he's got a lot of experience in this field as well. So we have a talented group, as John Sullivan said, most talented group of candidates across the board for all the offices that he's seen in 20 years, and we're going to have quite a race for planning board. It's going to be interesting.
Let's move on to school committee, and let's check in over at Town Hall and get some comments from our Town Hall crew. Jerry and Sandy?
Yeah, I think we have a few things we'd like to say about school committee, because probably this one race is more indicative of the kind of races that we've seen for the last couple of years. And that, of course, is that there's 2 seats open. Both incumbents have decided to run for re-election, and we have a challenger. And as Jerry has said many times in previous years, as soon as you have 2 incumbents, running for their seats, running for re-election, they obviously have the advantage over any challenger. How much does a challenger really have to make up in order to beat an incumbent?
As a general rule, any type of challenger, there's a rule of thumb in politics, and from my old political science days, is incumbents have a 10% bounce right off the bat. So you have to make up a 10% deficit from the person that's the next one up. The question is to whether basically Mrs. Abrams can make up the difference with, she's changing a little bit of the rules, and I think is a good idea. She's basically, because Kathy Bodie is approaching it from competence and excellence in the Winchester Public Schools. Ed O'Connell is talking about, 2 keys to learning and also teaching. And then Lydia's approaching it from the parents and involving the parents. So in a sense, she's approaching it the correct way, because what she's doing is she's refocusing the debate. The question is, are the voters tired of the school committee in the way they're currently set up or not? The second issue, and I think this is kind of left out of it, is the master plan for the schools. Did that have anything to do with the race itself? I would think not at this point in time. I think that the issue of the schools had more to do with the taxation and the override of 2.5 and less to do with the school committee itself. So I think it's going to be very tough for Mrs. Abrams to make up the difference in the school committee race.
Yes, I would agree, and that's what we had been talking about. I think in this case, the incumbents stand a very good chance of being reelected. On the other hand, to pull out another factor of what you have been trying to say, and that is that, of course, Kathy Bodie has been running the big campaign, car toppers and all that kind of stuff, postcards and roof racks, if you want to call them roof racks, but I call them car
It's
toppers.
cultural.
That's all right. In any case, and then you have Ed O'Connell, who's really been pretty much laid back, very quiet kind of race. And of course, Lydia has been coming out again, with a much more visible campaign. So again, you have another factor being thrown in there.
Well, it's interesting, yeah. I mean, Kathy obviously has raised more money. Ed hasn't. But Ed has name recognition.
That's
When
correct,
you've been in
I
town
think.
government as long as Ed has in 30 years, Ed takes it. I had an interesting conversation once at the post office during this campaign with Ed O'Connell, and he basically doesn't like to raise money. He doesn't like to spend money. And I think he really goes back to an older time in Winchester when you didn't have to spend that much money and it much more was person to person. And I think, in a sense, if Ed wins tonight, that really reinforces the belief in that system.
Exactly. Well, I think that's what makes all of this kind of fun, is because we can sit here and chit-chat about what we think is going to happen, who's spending money, who's more visible, blah, blah, blah. And then we find the results, and we find out whether, in fact, we're correct.
Let's find out if we're correct, yes.
Yeah, we're going to find out if you're correct, because if you guys aren't correct, you're off. You're gone next year.
We like this too much. I'm sorry.
Well, we like having you.
All right, thank you, Al.
Thanks.
That's great. I would say, and I'm sure that Jerry would agree with me, the political professors would say that 10% bounce depends on a lot of things. Some incumbents, Jimmy Carter, George Bush might not agree with that kind of thing, but it's true. If you're doing a good job or you have that kind of name recognition, it is hard to have a challenger pick up on that. But
do you think there's a sense that in town government where, I mean, we are looking at a lot of newcomers here, and we're going to obviously see some newcomers on the planning board, but in a race like this, is there a sense that you have to, quote, maybe pay your dues, run, get name recognition, lose, and then
I think
come back next time?
traditionally in politics, running is sometimes necessary a couple of times to get to the office. I think in town government, there are a lot of ways to get that visibility without having run for elective office. There are so many opportunities at the appointed level and volunteer work but it's true in a normal situation that you need that visibility in order to gain voter confidence. And sometimes you can get it right away with a very good campaign that projects what the candidate's all about, and other times it takes a long time to build that recognition up. That's true.
Yeah. Why don't we, we've got, again, in school committee, we have 3 candidates, two incumbents running for the 2 seats. I think we're going to go take a look and see some of the comments and why, I believe the question is why they're running for office, which is raised, and let's see how those candidates answer that at the League of Women Voters Forum on March 16th.
I seek another term to provide continuity and support for 2 endeavors in particular, the renovation of our schools and the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan. I was one of 2 school committee members representing the school committee with representatives of selectmen and the finance committee to study the condition of the schools. This committee recommended to town meeting the creation of the Educational Facilities Planning and Building Committee, now affectionately known as the EFPBC, with the mandate to design a master plan for the renovation of all the schools. Now in its second incarnation, the EFPBC has been working very hard these last 2 months to produce a pared-down plan for the renovation of McCall, which was enthusiastically approved by the school committee last Tuesday. This Thursday, March 20th, the proposal will be presented to town meeting for approval of a bond to finance it. I would like to see this project to its fruition and to continue my efforts to ensure that a workable and efficient plan exists for the improvement of all the schools. In the immediate future, critical repairs will need to be done to the remaining 6 schools, and this will be addressed at this spring's town meeting. My first-hand knowledge of the physical condition of the schools makes my candidacy an asset in the ongoing discussions.
Our major goal must always be to maintain the academic integrity of our system. I do not want to see the graduates of 2005 get an education that is inferior to that which the graduates of 1995 received. Of course, we must resolve the problem of our deteriorating schools. I believe that last Tuesday, I fired the shot that should have been heard around the town when I said we are on the verge of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. We have procrastinated too long. Right now, the newly constituted Education Facilities Planning Committee, the town manager, the superintendent, the principal of McCall, all support the revised proposal, which suggests that we can do this program without an override. The time has come to get on with it and to put our Humpty Dumpty schools together again. Another issue is the escalating cost of special education. Chapter 766 is a noble piece of legislation on which the state has reneged. We recognize that every child is ours, and we shall do all that we can for each and every one of them. But my friends, we are desperate for increased state aid.
I had a military upbringing. My dad was a career officer in the infantry. So he and my mom gave me a pretty disciplined and structured upbringing. I also had the example of a parent with a thirst for knowledge. It was a combination of those two things that gave me my foundation. I also got exposure to private school learning, again, structure, discipline, and the freedom of the public school system that taught me, as my father did, to become a critical thinker, to become an independent thinker, to question, to analyze, to not just march along. So the combination of these two schools of thought led me straight into teaching, because it was there that I could combine that discipline of curriculum and that freedom of critical thinking to teach children to discover and learn through the process of discovery. The best teachers I ever had were those who taught me to think, to analyze, to contribute different points of views, to arrive at a solution through collaboration.
We're back in the studio here. You were just looking at the tape from the League of Women Voters Forum on March 16th, and those were the school committee candidates, all of them very well spoken and insightful.
No question. We're going into an important period with the school situation. It's always an important period, of course, but here we're in a situation, we just voted at town meeting last week to spend some money to upgrade our McCall School.
$17
and
million.
$17+ million, and we're going to do some other work over the next number of years as well. But it's not just buildings, it's the programs and the other things as well, as we heard the candidates talk about. This is a very interesting race because we have two popular incumbents. They were unopposed 3 years ago when they ran. When Kathy Bodie came on for her first term, she ran 3 years ago, and Ed O'Connell was running for his fourth term, of course, 3 years ago. There was no opposition. They both did well across the board, similar votes, some stronger precincts for one versus the other, but two very popular candidates. Along comes Lydia Rivera Abrams, obviously enthusiastic, energetic, some good experience in schools. She's taught, she's worked in school administration. She has enthusiasm and insight as to what should be done and getting parents and families involved in educational programs. I think we'd have to say we're very lucky to have such good candidates at a time that we need them to make sure that our school system improves and stays up with the needs of the 21st century coming up.
Right. You know, let's move on to Housing Authority here. We do have a race in the Housing Authority for one seat on the Housing Authority. We have Nicholas Bonapane and Susan Keller. Neither of them incumbents.
No, as a matter of fact, the incumbent, Archie McIntyre, is retiring from his term, 5-year term for Housing Authority, and Archie is a former chairman. He had a year as chair of the Housing Authority, and Marion O'Brien is chair currently, but Archie is stepping down, and we have these two candidates, one Nick Bonapane, who did not make the League of Women Voters Forum either, but who's been in town for some time, and as we know is the proprietor of Winchester Wine and Spirits, and has been philanthropic in support of some of the town activities through that business. And we have Susan Keller, who did come to the debate at the League and did a good job of informing the community of her number of years in real estate property management for a company that managed elderly and family housing around New England, some 2,000 units, and her current job at Harvard University in housing management. So she has a lot of experience in this field and offered that in the debate when we heard her.
So both of those, I think, again, we don't have exit polls or anything to give us any indications, so we hope to have our results starting to come in within, hopefully within the next few minutes. We're looking at, what, 8:30 here? Polls closed at 8, but of course, anybody who was in line or at the polls at 8 o'clock was going to be allowed to vote, so, and I know from when I went up to vote today, it takes a while to go through that ballot.
It takes a little while to circle the ovals in the ballot, but having the handwritten situation now is easier for the town in counting and in the maintenance for the election process.
Right.
We had those machines for many, many years, but storing the machines and keeping them maintained was expensive and more difficult than it will be to manage the paper ballots. So the advantage now with paper ballots that we didn't have many years ago is that they're automatically counted as they go into the machine. So you don't have to stay up all night counting.
Well, and also, you know, you know, anybody who's been watching our election coverage over the years is we've had to have runners out at the polls. At one point, I believe it wasn't too many years ago, we had 8 polling places. Runners out at 8 polling places, trying to collect from, say, 4 or so machines for each precinct, tabulate those all up, get them run down to the studio, and try to add them all up here. So we were only able to give the viewers a very rough count, and of course we had no absentee ballots.
That's right. We didn't have any absentee. I didn't see any absentee.
No, I mean we had no absentee ballots in our count. In our count at that point. I wasn't referring to this year. Just in past years, we were not able to know. So if we ended up at the end of the evening with a close race, some of them could be tipped one way or another by the absentee ballots, which would not be counted.
It has happened.
Yeah, until sometime later in the evening. As contrasting with the new election process, and I see you have our specimen ballot here, and if we can get that, and in case you weren't familiar with the ballot that is on the machines, I believe we are in our second year.
Yes.
Second year of these machines, and it's like filling out a test. filling out those circles on the ballot there, which are then fed into a, let's see if we get that there, get that out of the light there. There we go. Again, this is a specimen ballot from Precinct 1, and just filling out those circles, like many of us are familiar with, taking our tests, and then feed in the machine, as you say, gets counted automatically, and those results are, in our computer age, are transmitted by modem to the town hall, and the absentee ballots are already collected and fed in, I believe, earlier in the day. So I think the only downside that I've heard to it, in a conversation I had last week with Carolyn Ward, is that they have discovered about some new record-keeping requirements, and I believe she told me that federal election results, the ballots have to be kept for 22 months. I think the record-keeping requirement for town elections is a little less, but I believe it's somewhere around 12 months. So she said one thing she hadn't counted on was the amount of space that was going to be required for storing these. I don't know whether it's going to be greater or less than the space required for all those voting machines.
I hope less. I think less.
That was one negative. I think in general she was very enthusiastic about the process.
I would just say, if we have a minute on absentee ballots, the most famous one in my lifetime anyway for us here is certainly in 1967, was similar to a Tip O'Neill story. Tip, having lost, he says, his first run for city council, I guess, in Cambridge, and then winning for 50 years thereafter. John Sullivan, when he ran in 1967, when the votes were counted, was 7 votes ahead of Ed Williams for selectman, but there were absentee ballots to be counted. Ed Williams got 10 and John got 2. So Ed Williams went ahead by 1 vote after the absentees were counted, and 30 years later, John has never been even threatened in an election. He's done beautifully, but that was quite an absentee count, no question. I remember that night very well.
It could be tipped one way or another. And,
That's
of
right.
course, that can happen very easily in some of the town meeting
That's right.
ones where 1 or 2 votes can mean the difference between getting elected or not getting elected.
Definitely.
Let's go back to the selectman race. Again, as we said, we have 6 candidates here, one of whom is an incumbent running for 2 seats. A bit of an unusual situation where you have a lot of candidates and looking for a seat that's been opened up, technically 2 seats. And just briefly going down through them, how about 10 seconds on each of these candidates? Chris Galuzzo.
Okay, young man who's just completed his education out of Bentley, who's Winchester High graduate, and he's interested in becoming active in town government and has offered himself for selectman.
And started off in a big way.
Big way, that's right.
Josh Alper.
Josh Alper is a land use attorney in Boston who's been active in town government here for more than a decade, and he's been 4 years on Conservation Commission, 4 years on Zoning Board of Appeals, twice chairman, and very active in some of the volunteer efforts for the community.
Donna D'Agostino.
Well, Donna D'Agostino is as active as anybody in the town in volunteer activity. She's been on the planning board. She won a write-in campaign in 1991 for a seat on the planning board, and became chairman of the planning board, of course, and now this is her 3rd run for selectman. She's been very visible in town affairs, both political and social, volunteering, and that sort of thing.
We have Steve Powers, our one incumbent.
Right, Steve Powers, who had a 1 term on the school committee and now running for a 4th term on the Board of Selectmen, has run townwide, for all these, plus 1 other campaign for selectmen on a single seat where he finished a very close second to Tom Schmidt when Tom came on the board. So Steve has run very strong in all of his elections and hasn't shown any particular weakness.
We have Robert Beatty, again, people we've talked about before.
Bob Beatty, very active, 30 years, town meeting member, 6 years in the Finance Committee, former chair, 4 years as a Commissioner of Trust Funds, chair of that for a term, 10 years on the Capital Planning Committee, very involved in financial matters for the town over a long period of time, and has retired from a career in management, but he's active in town affairs.
And last but not least, Diane Patalano Long.
Diane Patalano Long, we don't know much about her. We know she's an attorney, and she's a young mother, has a youngster, a 6-year-old or so, lives up on Ridge Street in the corner where Lexington and Arlington come together near Winchester, and she has not been as visible to us in the campaign because she wasn't at the league forum, but we do know that she's interested in being more active in community affairs, and this is why she's running.
Well, we did have the pleasure from hearing from her at the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Breakfast, so she got a little visibility there. Let's go to the tape. Again, one of the best ways to get visibility here, if you're running for public office in town, is to participate in the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum that took place a week ago Sunday. We're going to go and take a look at the selectmen candidates, and I believe we're going to hear the answer to the question of why they're running for office.
Okay.
Winchester must address several critical planning and zoning issues, including creating and acting on a comprehensive long-term plan for the North End, or Triangle area. This neighborhood, like all our neighborhoods, is entitled to respect. By placing restrictions on use, by increasing setbacks to separate businesses from residential neighbors, we can prevent North Main Street from becoming a continuous strip mall. Properties that are inappropriately zoned should be reclassified to commercial, business, institutional, or residential use. By wisely exercising local control over commercial land use, we can better preserve and enhance Winchester's amenities, ambience, character, and residential nature. For example, our current zoning bylaw makes us particularly vulnerable to fast food operations. It does not give us the necessary flexibility and control to protect adjacent residential properties and neighborhoods from the traffic, parking, and other impacts associated with such businesses. Land use in Winchester faces strong pressure from outside corporate interests. My experience can help preserve the town's unique character and ambience.
I support the schools, contrary to other opinion. Both my wife and I are products of public school education, and our children went to the Winchester schools K through 12 and graduated. My K through 12 public school education was sound enough, although it wasn't in this school system, to permit me to go and achieve a PhD in chemical engineering. While wrestling with the school building problem, there are other infrastructure needs, such as our play fields, which should not be neglected. We haven't done one in 3 years. We must deal with Neswick contract resolution, which is a real burden, and the North End Triangle Plan must be resolved. The correct use of Winning Farm is also important. In addition, there should be continued support of seniors' social services, and we should implement an assisted living facility without too much longer delay.
I am supporting the revised plan for the McCall School renovations because I believe, as do our town educators, that this is an educationally sound proposal. I believe this proposal is more fiscally responsible than the original. The first plan had the unanimous support of the Board of Selectmen, but was overwhelmingly refused by the voters. We have a new plan now that will work without an override. Let's do it. I ask you to consider the candidate who is in touch with the needs of the people and respects the will of the people. I think that the voters of Winchester want an educational budget that is realistic and educationally sound, and a Board of Selectmen that is in touch with the voters' needs and concerns. And I pledge to stay in touch with those needs and listen to those concerns, while keeping Winchester affordable for young families and seniors. Planning is another perspective that I shall bring to the board. Failure to plan means planning to fail. I believe we must preserve the architectural heritage and unique character of our community. I support a flourishing business community as well.
We need to maintain the excellence of our schools and our municipal services. We need to invest in a capital improvement plan for our town structures and our schools. Yet at the same time, we must keep our taxes